Ben Askren and Jake Paul. Ben Askren versus Jake Paul. Well, the fight ended the way that I hold my hands up. It ended the way I expected it to end. I'll be honest with you guys. I'll level with you. In the time leading up to the fight, I knew that Ben Askren's striking was pretty, just being generous in my words here, was pretty poor. Wasn't great. Was pretty lousy. And Jake Paul's striking was good for someone who's just kind of still very new to the combat sporting world, to boxing. His striking was really, really good. At least definitely better than Ben Askren's. And I knew that in the time running up to this fight. The thing is, I don't like Jake Paul. My dislike for Jake Paul runs very deep, really, really deep. So I let that emotion get in the way of get in my head, and let that emotion just to block off the facts from me. Really, I knew that Ben Askren didn't stand a chance, and not that I don't hate Ben Askren. I do like him, but in this situation, in this instance, I knew that his striking just wasn't up to the job. I knew that all along. I was just praying. I was just hoping, because of the dislike that I have for Jake Paul, I was praying for a miracle to happen in that ring. And I went to bed that night because the fight happened at a really earlier time, UK time over here in the UK. So what's happening in the US? It was really late over here, or really early in the morning over here in the UK. I only really started seeing the results of the fight when I woke up the following Sunday morning, and my heart just sank. My heart just sank when I saw the news coming through, all the pundits and the highlights and all everything, the Twitter messages, the posts, all of that stuff on social media. My heart sank. Even at that point, I was praying that this guy would beat this annoying YouTuber. I was just hoping for a miracle to happen. So, all right, enough talk about that. The fight didn't go the way that I would have hoped for it to go. And well, let me just say that the fight, as the fight as it progressed, Ben Askren's striking wasn't up to the job. Jake Paul's striking was just a right hook that knocked Askren out. And what I was really suspecting towards the end of the fight was that it did seem, I suspected something with the referee, because even though Askren did go down to the floor, that shot just sent Askren down to the ground. Askren wasn't fully, let's say, knocked out. He actually got up again. He seemed okay to continue. In my eyes, he generally seemed, my opinion was, when I saw him get up from the ground there, from the canvas, he did seem okay to continue the fight. But the referee, I think I saw that Askren was having brief exchanges of words with the referee, but the referee didn't seem to be having any of it. And the referee stopped the fight. It was my suspicion that something happened that went on there, because the fight happened so quickly. And Ben Askren did seem like he was all right to continue fighting on. But okay, by the time I saw that already, he had already lost. The fight was already been done and dusted. He even posted on his Twitter, "Sorry, world." So he has accepted he lost the fight. He's accepted the referee's decision. So even he is not contesting that case. But I'm sure, I don't know what other people think, but this is my opinion. I do think that I do think that the referee could have potentially still allowed Ben Askren to continue the fight. That's all I really say on the matter. So now, just stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, now looking at boxing, at least looking at this niche of combat sports, is this what boxing has now become? Because I see it as this sort of Jake Paul hype train. But he's now had 3 successive boxing fights. It's a hype train that seems to be started, and now this third fight is only added to the hype train to keep the hype train going. And now the Jake Paul is now calling other fighters from the mixed martial arts. He's called out Nate Diaz. Well, I say he's called them out. He's disrespected them as well. He has called out Nate Diaz. He's called out DC Cormier. DC Cormier actually reacted to Jake Paul when he kind of called out Tyron Woodley, who actually went backstage to meet Jake Paul's team. You can even call them his yes man. And DC Cormier didn't like how I forgot the name of the other boxer who was there with Jake Paul, but he didn't take too kindly to how one of those boxers there, is it J. Leon Love or something like that? He didn't like how that guy had disrespected Tyron Woodley, who's quite an accomplished mixed martial artist in his field. He's quite successful. He's done achieved quite a lot, even though currently things aren't looking so good for him in the UFC. He's lost quite a few of his most recent fights, and I think they are looking to cut him. I'm not sure if they've done that already. But yeah, things are not looking so good for him. But in comparison to Jake Paul, of course, Tyron Woodley has done far more in combat sports than Jake Paul. I mean, Jake Paul's just had 3 fights, and those 3 fights, now coming on to my next point, those 3 fights are against people who are not really professional boxers. They're not proper boxers. In the case of Ben Askren, even though he's a professional combat sports athlete, he's not very good with his hands. He can't really box. His striking is pretty lousy. Now, what was I going to say again? Yes. So I lost my train of thought there for a second. Would I call Jake Paul a professional boxer? Now, on paper, maybe. He may have the license to practice as a professional boxer, but I wouldn't really class him. Now, you may say, guys in the comment, if you're watching this on YouTube, you may say in the comment section, I'm an idiot for saying this. He has a license. You know, there's paperwork, there's legal documentation to prove that he is a professional boxer. He can train other people to be boxers, and he can practice, he can compete as one. All of that stuff, fine. But would you put him up there with the elite level boxers? Would you put him up there with the professional elite level boxers who have had a long, who have fought other professional elite level boxers? Would you say Jake Paul is a seasoned professional boxer? I wouldn't, because as I just said a few seconds ago, he hasn't fought anyone who is a professional elite boxer of that level, of that caliber, who's a, let me say, I don't be careful my wording, but he's a veteran boxer, a veteran combat sports athlete. Although, okay, again, Ben Askren would be an exception, because Ben Askren, in terms of boxing, he's not very good with striking. And to be honest, for me, this a fight that just happened on Saturday night in Atlanta, Georgia, in the US at the Mercedes-Benz Mercedes-Benz Arena, has, for me, is confirmed that his striking really isn't good. I go back to what I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, at the beginning of this video. I was hoping for a miracle to happen, and I was saying all over Instagram to other people as I was talking about the fight. Even though I was kind of sort of promoting the fight in my stories and on my feed, and all over my other platforms on Twitter and on Facebook. I was promoting the fight as best as I could. I was rooting for Ben Askren. I was in Ben Askren's corner, not physically, but I was rooting and hoping for him to win. But in my heart of hearts, I knew that his striking was just so lousy. And I was praying for a miracle to happen in that cage, and in that ring, and that just didn't happen. So for me, the fact that he's lost against someone who is still very green to the sport, still very fresh and new to the sport, but so far he seemed to have walked through and sort of beaten every single opponent that's been put in front of him, or every single opponent that he has called for, smartly decided to call for of his own accord. It's kind of confirmed to me that Ben Askren he's just no good striker. I mean, he couldn't beat Jake Paul, who's a YouTuber, and who's an annoying YouTuber, who's someone who I don't class as a professional combat sports athlete. Because again, he's not really competed against those elite level professional boxers in this sport that he's just recently joined and started out in. So for me, not to knock Ben Askren, but this has confirmed to me that his striking really is lousy. And I think I can say safely that this is just one of those things where people say you either you've got it or you don't have it. You either you got it or you don't got it. That sort of thing. So when I say that, because I was hoping that between January or so time of 2021, I was hoping that between that time and this time now, in the middle of April, when the fight's taking place now, I was kind of thinking and hoping that maybe Ben Askren could go away and really, really, really work on his boxing, on his striking, but it just didn't happen. I'm sure he was doing that, and he was training hard and everything, and in the ring there, he didn't look in shape. He looked really, as the commentators were saying, he looked like a bag of milk. He didn't look necessarily in shape, but excuse me, but it's not nothing new that his where his strengths are on the ground and grappling and in wrestling, and that's okay. Still on the other side in mixed martial arts, he still has had a really good and successful career. But when it comes to boxing, striking, no, it's just it's not for him. So back to Jake Paul. It's really concerning that after seeing the result of this fight, just is this is this where boxing is heading to? You can have all these annoying entertainers coming over from YouTube. Well, I call them annoying YouTubers. He's one of them. He's one that I know of the most. Him and his brother, but him especially. Is this what boxing is coming to now? Because it does have that feeling. It's my own personal opinion that when you have someone like Jake Paul coming over to the sport, okay, fine. He in boxing, in combat sports in general, from what I can see, especially in like mixed martial arts, you have to have something about you that makes people either hate you or like you. So at least when you're gonna fight any opponent, you need a reason for people to actually tune in to watch you fight, which will obviously, first of all, to do that, you need to generate the attention, generate the hype around yourself, whether it's love, respect, or even hatred. And in Jake Paul's case, he does the hatred side of things really, really well. He offends people really, really well. So, of course, people like myself, I don't like him. So when it comes to like a fight like he had with Ben Askren, I'll tune in to see him lose. But of course, that works for him in the business sense of things because it generates the pay-per-views. For this fight that he had with Ben Askren, I think from what I understand, the event generated a pay-per-view total of approximately 1.5 million pay-per-views, and it generated, from what he posted on his Twitter, from what Jake Paul said, it generated $75 million. So I'm being told, so I've read, so he says. But I mean, I do understand that in this sport, you need to have again, you need to build some hype about you, some hype around you, so at least to get the attention. And gotta lose my train of thought. Yeah, once you've done that, you can at least, whether you lose or win, you can lose my train of thought. Yeah, you can at least make a good living from the sport. Now, where Jake Paul is concerned, the reason why I go back to what I was saying initially, the reason why I'm concerned as to where boxing is going, it's a sport that I do respect. Mixed martial arts also, it's a sport that I respect because it's a brutal sport. To get in there to first of all, when an event's going to be arranged, the fighters have to go away, make weight, cut weight. They have to train, and make sure that they're as good as they can be. They have to make sure their jiu-jitsu is on point, make sure that their striking is on point, that their wrestling is on point, grappling, everything. They're not going to be good at all those things, but they've got to make sure that they train themselves as much as possible, so that when they're in the cage or in the octagon or in the ring there, whether it's boxing or mixed martial arts, they can compete as best they can do, so they always got the best chance of winning. Now, Jake Paul has done this with boxing. There was evidence about him training and just doing what he's supposed to do to prepare for the fight, for the big night. He's done that, but there's something that doesn't sit well with me. That someone like this can just come onto and just burst onto the scene. And how do I explain it? How do I word this? I'm sure people understand. There's something about this that just doesn't sit well with me. You can just come onto the scene. He's built up his fan base from doing something completely different. And in the combat sporting world, most of the athletes there have built up their fan base by being successful in the sport they're doing, whether it's boxing, mixed martial arts, or grappling, whatever. But he's built up his fan base entirely differently. And of course, by all the YouTube stuff he's done, even before that, he was in the Disney channel filming works, doing whatever as an actor. But for me, it kind of just like seems unfair. He can just burst into the scene and start disrespecting people. He can garner attention in that way. People he have all his fans, all his haters will be looking at him. And if there's a particular fight person he wants to fight, if they agree to that fight, for that fight to happen, if the organization or the other fighters, if the organization such as the UFC, okay, like the Nate Diaz situation now, if say the UFC agreed to Nate Diaz fighting Jake Paul and the fight happens, you know, it would. I understand it will generate a lot of money. It will generate a lot of pay-per-views because of, you know, it's Jake Paul. And on the other side, you have another big name, Nate Diaz, on behalf of the mixed martial arts community, on behalf of the combat sporting world. But, you know, Nate Diaz is someone who has built up his fan base by, you know, being a successful fighter, and it's sort of back when he comes from with his brother Nick. Jake Paul, on the other hand, he's built up his own his fan base by doing all these YouTube videos. Where granted, okay, they're silly, stupid videos doing stupid stuff, but has been successful and it's worked for him. He's garnered a lot of fans, he's garnered a lot of views, and with that comes all the ad revenue from all the money he can make on YouTube, you know, and with that also comes all the sponsorship deals as well, because he has all of that attention. He can also share some of that attention with other big name brands that want to, you know, sponsor him. So there's that sort of thing. That's why I find it quite unfair. And also, this guy is also very, very disrespectful to many other of the... Let me start that again. He's also very disrespectful how he calls out people. And, you know, I've noticed somebody pointed this out to me the other day, and it was something I was thinking, and I didn't think my opinion, that I kept it privately to myself. I didn't think that my opinion was actually correct. When they said it to me, I thought, okay, maybe I am right here, because what I was thinking is that the names of the people he's called out, likewise Ben Askren, are the names of people who he knows he can beat. And it goes back to the point I made before. I wouldn't call Jake Paul a professional... Well, even though on paper he's a professional boxer, I wouldn't call him a professional, elite level, seasoned boxer, because he hasn't yet been put in a situation whereby he has all of his talents, at least where boxing is concerned. All of his talents and his abilities haven't been tested strenuously, thoroughly, and you know, almost effortlessly. You know, his abilities have not been tested to his limit to know whether he's a seasoned professional boxer. You know, to know whether he belongs up there with those elite level boxers. You know, so it's quite annoying to see all this hype built around him, and he himself is kind of he's doing himself, granted, but it's annoying for me that he's saying he's a professional boxer. He knocked this person, he knocked that person. He's basically saying the people that he can knock out, the people who he knows who he can knock out because their boxing ability, their striking, because it's boxing, their capability of striking and boxing is going to be very poor. So he's basically saying that because he knows he can beat them. You know, those are, as I've been told before in the past, are padded fights. Those are fights whereby one of the fighters will easily win, one of the opponents can walk away with an easy win. Likewise, the fight between this big event that just happened now on Saturday, the fight between himself and Ben Askren, that clearly was a padded win, because we all knew. Well, I speak for myself. Despite me hoping that Ben Askren would win, despite me hoping for that miracle to happen, and in my heart of hearts, my gut was telling me Ben Askren doesn't stand a chance here. And if you look at that match, it just lasted one round, not even more than up to half of the first round, I don't think. And before you knew it, Askren was on the floor. Granted, he wasn't purely knocked out. He still got up. He still could have continued the fight, but the referee decided against that, and the fight ended there. So let's see where else this hype train goes. Nate Diaz, Tyron Woodley, DC Cormier, and thank you very much to Dustin Poirier, who's nicely stirred the pot on Twitter by saying that he would like to see a fight between Mike Perry and Jake Paul. And Mike Perry, yes, this just is another testament to how disrespectful this guy is, this Jake Paul is. Although you could say it's kind of like karma working, it's just doing what it's supposed to do with Mike Perry, because it kind of relates to what happened between Mike Perry and Darren Till. So Mike Perry and Jake Paul were sparring, just training, and I think someone in the gym there, they actually recorded just a small clip of Mike Perry and Jake Paul sparring. I think in that training session, Jake Paul won. And Jake Paul got hold of the clip and uploaded it to his Twitter or to one of his social media platforms. and he said that he just exaggerated how the whole thing happened. Mike Perry has not taken too kindly to that, and has basically slandered and slagged off, as we would call it here in the UK slang. He has slagged off Jake Paul, saying you're this, you're that, and you're just surrounded by a bunch of yes men. And to be honest, I agree with Mike Perry. Yeah, Jake Paul must be surrounded by a bunch of yes men to have his ego, to be as disrespectful as he's being, so to have as much confidence to disrespect all these people who can hurt him, who can really do some damage to this guy with his big mouth. So when I say there's karma doing its business with Mike Perry, because Mike Perry kind of exaggerated a sparring session he had with Darren Till, saying that he had beaten up Darren Till so badly. And Darren Till said in the podcast, here in the UK with a podcast known as James English, he said that basically he said that sparring session, it was in private, behind closed doors. Nobody saw it, just a few people who don't really matter. It just matters to us, but they're not really significant. It happened basically in private. Nobody saw that fight. Somebody saw that sparring session. That sparring session wasn't paid for. Nobody paid to see that sparring session. So that sparring session is meaningless. It means fuck all. I quote in that Darren Till's words, but he was right. But I say that because Jake Paul has done the same thing to Mike Perry. Mike Perry doesn't seem to be taking too kindly to it. But from the footage I saw on Mike Perry's Instagram feed, more than likely, maybe from the way he was acting, saying he was pissed before putting that ice cream in his mouth. There's just someone who's missed weight twice now, who before he put what looked like a cornetto ice cream in his mouth, he didn't look so pissed to me. But that's just my opinion. Maybe he's hiding his anger really well. But I can understand Mike Perry's frustration at Jake Paul for releasing that footage there, and kind of like off the back of that trying to say to people, I even beat Mike Perry's ass. I could beat Mike Perry in a boxing match. But enough about Jake Paul. This is boxing match number 3. So, excuse me. This is boxing match number 3. So, let's see where this hype train goes to next. I call it a hype train, and I'm sure Jake Paul's gonna come across an opponent who's going to derail his hype train and basically put him in his place. And so it's bound to happen one day, and knowing Jake Paul, from what I can see, this is someone that his image is everything to him. If he had lost this fight to Ben Askren, the way Ben Askren's handling his loss is pretty good. I have a lot of respect to this guy, because I have to admit, if I was in Ben Askren's shoes, if I was an elite level mixed martial artist and an elite level combat sports athlete, even though my striking was poor, if I was Ben Askren, I have to say I don't think I'd be dealing with the loss so well from based on my past experiences. But that's another story for another day. But if I'm sure that it's my belief that when when Jake Paul comes across an opponent that he can't beat and he loses to that opponent, he will not be able to live it down. He will not be able to live it down, and probably will not seek another boxing match. That's just my belief, because he seems to be someone who, again, his image means everything to him, and I'm not sure how to explain that, but those sort of people that if just one bad thing happens to them, it's out there in public, everyone's seen, especially after they've run their mouth and built so much hype around themselves, they've really stroked their ego that much. They all seem to be the sort of people that can't deal with loss or embarrassment or anything negative happening in their life. They just can't deal with it at all. And I think when he comes across that opponent and he loses to them, that'll be it. We'll not hear about this guy anymore ever again. I was hoping that would have been the case with Ben Askren, but that wasn't the case. So let's see what else happens. Let's see where this hype train where it goes to next. So moving on, the UFC Vegas 24, Jeremy Stephens versus Draco Close. Now, excuse me. Mouth was a bit dry there. So Jeremy Stephens versus Draco Close. This fight should have happened on Saturday night, but it didn't. And what really concerns me, at least on behalf of Jeremy Stevens, not that I know him or anything like that, but looking at his fighting record, he has lost about 4 or 5 of his past fights. And I think it was 4. The 5th fight was no contest for some reason or the other. But of course, if you're coming off the back or the front end of a losing streak in the fight world, especially with an organization such as the UFC, that doesn't look good for you. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do cut this guy. Now, I'm bringing his own particular case up because at the stare downs on the weigh-ins, at the stare downs, for some reason he pushed his opponent. I heard that there was some beef happening around these two guys. I'm not sure what it was. I couldn't find any information on the online quick enough for making this podcast. But unfortunately for the other guy, for Draco Close, he fell ill, and that's understandable, having to make weight. So, having to make such a light weight, such a low weight for this fight. I think when he fell down, and I could see what happened when Stevens shoved him, Draco's head actually went back a little bit, and it did look, although he didn't convulse, but you could see something had happened there, and he fell ill, and the following morning it went from bad to worse, and he just couldn't fight. So the doctors said that he would have to go to the hospital, and the UFC cancelled the fight. Now, I have to point out that for me, out of the two guys, Jeremy Stevens needs a win. He needs a win, because looking at his fighting record and where it currently stands at the moment, things aren't really looking good for the guy at all. 4 losses, no, that's not good at all. I mean, that shove, just when you're this close, I'm not winning or losing. I don't know if you're going to win or lose your next fight, but when you're this close to the opportunity to at least put things right, to get things back on track, why throw that away? Why chuck all of that away? Why throw it away over nothing? There was no need for him to shove his opponent. No need at all. And I have to say, for the rest of the UFC fight card, the Robert Whittaker versus Calvin Gastelum fight was okay. Whittaker proved again that he's a well-rounded fighter, good stand-up, good ground game, good grappling game. He's really good in the floor, he can control his opponent. It was alright. Now, should he be in line for a title fight? Yes. For what I can see, he's had so many wins in that weight division. He's basically walked through all the guys there, now sitting at number 1, just beneath Israel Adesanya. So I think, that fight, it makes sense. I mean, again, he has fought all the guys in his weight division. He's now sitting at number 1 in the UFC rankings for, which weight division is it? For the middleweight. Yes, just beneath Israel Adesanya, who's currently holding the title for that weight division. So, yeah, I believe he's in line for a title fight, just to make it happen. If Israel Adesanya would agree to it, if Dana White would agree to it, but I can't see why they wouldn't agree to it. Yeah, the fight makes sense, and yeah. So I'm not sure what else to add to that. But I have to admit, a lot of the fights in the UFC, for a lot of their fight cards, I have to say they've been okay. The good fights that I've seen, surprisingly, not to bash these organizations, have actually been coming from other organizations such as Bellator and One Championship, especially the event that happened about a week ago now, whereby Eddie Alvarez had disqualification for supposedly hitting the back of his opponent's head. Those organizations, especially One Championship, their fights always seem very entertaining. Their fighters seem very, very sharp when their strikes, and really, really, they really get into it when the fight starts. So, yeah, and that Stevens fight against Close was actually replaced by the fight between Tracy Cortez and Justin Keach. That was a good fight, and these two girls fought really, really well. Cortez threw plenty. I keep getting words jumbled up, guys. It's a bad habit I have, and I don't know why I can't kick it, but I keep on trying. Cortez threw plenty of nice takedowns in there. She had good control in her ground game, especially in the first round. and both ladies did have a really good stand up. But I have to say again, a lot of the events from the UFC haven't proven to be that entertaining. So hopefully things will change in future. So guys, yeah, I mean, I think I've covered and said everything I need to say in this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. What's really annoyed me, and what's really, as you can see, it's taken up a chunk of the time. If you've listened this far, if you watched this far, if you're watching on YouTube, has been the Jake Paul and Ben Askren situation, because this guy, Jake Paul, is going to be making, from just the sort of person he is, he's going to be making a lot of noise in the boxing community and in the mixed martial arts community, in the combat sporting world in general as a whole. He's going to be making a lot of noise to get a lot of attention. And I was having a discussion one day with, with one of my friends who's really, really well vested in mixed martial arts. He follows the sport really closely. He knows far more about the sport than I do. So whenever I'm speaking to him, I'm always learning all the time. The one competitor that Jake Paul would like to fight is Conor McGregor. But I think Jake Paul's being smart at the moment. He's building up his name in the combat sporting world, especially in boxing. He's building up his name. He's building up the hype around his name just to garner as much attention as much as possible. So, whenever he fights someone, the pay-per-views will be rolling in. He'll be earning a lot of money, and the attention, of course, will help. But I think the one person who he wants to fight is Conor McGregor, and that makes sense. It's Conor McGregor, big name in the mixed martial arts community. He's a big name in the combat sporting world. And of course, if he's fighting Conor McGregor, the pay-per-views will be through the roof. It will make history. So, again, that's just the reason why I'm just giving a bit more background as to why I took up more than half of this podcast talking about the Ben Askren Jake Paul situation, because I know all over YouTube, all the mixed martial arts news channels, all the other mixed martial arts podcasts, it's going to be one of the big highlights that they're going to be talking about. But let's see what happens. For me personally, I think it's a hype train that's going to be short-lived, and until he meets his match, we're going to be hearing more and more about this guy. But yeah, definitely, you can't win them all. There's going to be that one opponent out there that's going to shut this guy up and put him to sleep. That's going to embarrass him for life. He will not be able to live it down. That's it, guys. Excuse me. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy this episode, please don't forget to leave a like, and please do subscribe. It really helps my channel when you do that. Also, my podcast is now available. I can say safely available. I can say happily and firmly with confidence. It is now on Apple Podcasts. It's also on Spotify, SoundCloud, and Google Podcasts as well. You can follow me on Instagram. My name is Ojiako1. On Twitter, my name is Ojiako. On Facebook, my name is Ojiako. And yeah, thanks again, guys.